Hello and welcome to another episode of the DC Crossover. I am Ben Simpson. That is Mike Cerrone. This is episode 143. Glad to have you with us. Be sure to follow us on all social media channels at the DC Crossover and at Cerrone16 on Twitter. And hit us up on the Talk DC Crossover podcast. The best place to be there. Yes, Mike is manning the talk, putting up clips here and there when our audio is actually working.
Yeah.
And then, you can follow us on there, like the videos, all that good stuff. Super Bowl hangover today here on Monday, the 13th. We're heading into, it goes from Super Bowl right into Valentine's Day. So it's like, obviously plenty of women like football too, but for a lot of wives or girlfriends or whatever, it's like, all right, you just had to go deal with your boyfriend's Super Bowl stuff, shenanigans, and now he gets to pay you back by taking you out to a nice dinner on Valentine's Day evening. I will say the going out on Valentine's Day itself definitely a little overrated. Because it's going to be tough to get a reservation anywhere. It's going to be crowded. You're going to have couples all over the place. We just did ours on Sunday. We did a little Valentine's Day lunch. Went over to Senor
lunch.
Tequila's, my favorite restaurant. It's been my favorite for like 7 years now. Had a little tacos chilangos, couple margaritas, some dip trio. Here's the move with the dip trio, Mike. So the dip trio typically is guacamole, queso, and beans. The way we always do it, we say, sub out the beans, give us another thing of queso. So it's two big old cups of queso,
My man.
and as well as some guac. Yeah, the margs are great. It was our solid Valentine's Day celebratory meal there. We did it on Sunday. Nobody there. Sunday afternoon,
Of course.
like 11:30, 12 o'clock. It was great. It was absolutely money. So we will not be going out tomorrow night. That is for sure. But I know you obviously the big. I know you've got big Valentine's Day plans tomorrow. I've heard you've just been talking nonstop about this big surprise you got planned for your lovely lady, right?
Yep. Exactly.
I'm only saying that in case she was like listening.
I don't know if she does anymore. To be honest with you.
Yeah, none of them do. None of
It's
the
always
women
like
in our lives
they have a
listen to our
nice
content.
they have a nice like a 10 episode stretch, and they're like, oh, I missed one. I'll catch the next one or anything like
Actually,
that.
the true sign of like your relationship progressing as it should is the fact that she doesn't listen anymore. That means like you guys have been
Yes.
together long enough where she's like, okay, I don't need
I
to
know
listen
what
to
you're
your
gonna
content
say.
anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So. Like you said, the whole entire going out on that particular day is not anything. I mean, it's kind of like similar to birthdays. Okay, 'cause
Sure.
you think about it, birthdays. When you go out for a birthday, typically people go out, because it's their birthday. But that's more of like a teenager type thing. Like, oh, it's your birthday, let's go out for your birthday dinner.
Right.
And then where you want to go. And that's the biggest thing is because nowadays you're like, all right, I got work tomorrow. I don't want to go out right now and have some drinks, something like that. I'd rather just wait until a Saturday or something like that. But the one thing that I do get really irritated about is when people sit there and they're like, oh, it's my birthday week. Like, okay, what? How is it your birthday week? Like, because
As an adult, it's embarrassing to say those words. Birthday week. It's a very embarrassing.
Well, it's because they use that excuse as, oh, it's my birthday week. You can't get mad at me, or you can't do this. It's like, hey, your birthday was 6 days ago. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? I mean, and for me personally, it's like the birthday celebration. I'm not a big fan of that because yes, I am sometimes obnoxious and loud and all that kind of stuff, and I get that part. But when it comes down to like a birthday where everyone's like, all right, we're celebrating Mike's birthday or something like that, I'm like, no, please don't. It's like I don't want, especially back in the day when like Don Pablo used to bring that stupid sombrero out to you.
Oh
and
yeah,
all that stuff.
that's so funny that you say Don Pablo's because I literally said Don Pablo's yesterday. I was talking about restaurants that like no longer are around anymore, and I was like, yeah, Don Pablo's, and like, yeah, that's so funny that you. What a random coincidence there. Because yeah, that was back in the day. A lot of it. I feel like Mexican restaurants in particular love showcasing the birthdays. There's always the big birthday song and stuff. But no, there's nothing more embarrassing than being at a table of your friends and then suddenly you see like the group of waiters and waitresses start walking over and you're like, oh no, who told them? And then they're coming up and they're clapping and they're doing their whole song and everyone at the restaurant's like turning around, looking at you, and it's the worst. It's the worst in the world.
Well, that's the thing is, when you have a birthday and you go out for that, there's always that one person in your group or your family that says like, "Oh, I'm gonna get them." You know, like like then start. They're the ones that are the most obnoxious when everyone comes over. They're like,
Yep.
"Oh, look, look, look!" You know, it's like I don't want to see, like you said, the wait staff over there grabbing a bin from like underneath the bar that has the sombrero and
Oof.
like a maraca or something like that. Like once you
Never
see
good.
that, you go to the bathroom and you hide there for an hour. I
No,
mean,
you have to. You have to. The I will say the only positive is when they come do that thing and you get like a free piece of cake out of it. Like they
yeah,
bring, and then suddenly it's like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. Yeah, sing the song
right.
while I stuff this in my mouth. That's the only positive thing about that, I will say.
But I mean, that's the thing though. Is like I said, for me, you know, and like I said, typically, you know, they used to call me the icebreaker back in high school and stuff like that. And that wasn't a everyday type of nickname, but they used to say that because I used to go out with friends when they were on like I don't know, like a double date, or they were in cahoots with this one person that they really liked, something like that, and they wanted to impress them, but they weren't really that, I guess you could say, outgoing to the point
Sure.
where they didn't want to be like that awkward person that's like sweating, even though we sweat all the time. That
That's
you
for
know,
sure.
they didn't want to be that one person that's sitting there like so got the nervous sweats. So because they
Right.
knew I could talk to anybody, so I would always talk to these people. You know, some of them who which I didn't even know. And that's the thing is, I would be talking to them kind of like lighten the air a little bit. But that's the problem though, is like I was always that type of person. But now for like birthdays and stuff like that, I don't want people to ask me what my birthday wishes are or
No.
what my best thing was for this past year. I'm just not that type of person. I don't like sitting there and asking questions or answering questions about myself. I don't want to answer stuff like that. It just makes me awkward, and I'm just like, you know, I would much rather not do this. I'd much rather do something more subtle.
Oh yeah, no. Nowadays birthdays are I want to just sit on my couch. I want to have like a couple cold ones.
Yep.
I want to eat like
Solas.
there you go. I want to eat some wings or pizza or whatever. I want to
Yep.
throw on a game or my favorite show or movie or whatever and just relax. Like that's the birthday move now. And as we get older and older, I think rather than I mean, there's nothing I would hate more than having to like stand in a crowded bar with no place to sit and just like and getting a drink once every like 45 minutes because the bar's so crowded. It's like there's just no, yeah,
I'm
it's
past
horrible.
those days.
It's
I'm
horrible.
so past those
Did you
days.
have any bar experiences this past week? And you always come in with some good bar stories.
Yeah. So this weekend, me and Jess actually took today off because it's the Super Bowl yesterday.
Right.
And we had some days, obviously, that we've accumulated over the past few years. And we took some part time off, I guess you could say, or PTO, or no, paid time off, or whatever.
time off, yeah.
We don't take it. We don't take any days off, so that's the problem. Is especially being a teacher, you never really get days off. Like you get like an hour and a half of time accumulated like every week. It kind of sucks.
Right.
But anyway, so we were like, hey, we're going to go over to our buddy's house on Sunday for the Super Bowl. How about we go out to eat on Friday? So on Friday, we ended up going out to eat to this place. I think it might have been in Reston. It was like some other part of Reston. I forgot. It was an Italian place. So we go out there, and all of a sudden, we see these two people walking, this couple. And I saw, me and the lady made eye contact or whatever, and I just kind of like gave her a little nod or something. And then as they sat down in the booth behind us, it was kind of awkward because the restaurant wasn't that busy, so we could hear their conversation.
Right.
And this guy, and I specifically texted you this. This was a 90-day fiance. To a T. This exact same thing could have been. They could have had TV cameras there that were hidden, and you would never know about it because literally this guy was asking questions about does this lady see guys typically, and what about her ex? Is he gonna like me? Are your kids
Oh,
gonna like
no.
me? And started asking these weird questions like, hey, you better watch. It was not Big Ed. It was not Big Ed. I think you bring that picture up. But yeah, it's like you literally look, and this guy was just asking all these questions, and she had an accent. She was Hispanic,
Sure.
and that's the thing is, he was dominating 95% of the topic. Like he would say, "Well, your ex is not going to like me because I'm white," and I was like, "Okay, here we go. Now we're going with
Oof.
something else." And then
That's a heavy conversation.
yeah, and then she started like kind of getting a little testy, and he was like, "Do you want more wine?" And then she was like, "No." And then he's like, "Oh, come on, it's good wine. I'll pay for it." And I'm like, "Okay."
Oh
And
no.
we
So
sat there
he's
for
loaded. Okay.
an extra 20 minutes just to listen to this conversation.
Oh my
And
god.
at one point he said, "Are you still cold?" And she was like, "No." He's like, "Oh, you don't want to scoot over towards me?" And all this
Oh
it
no.
was getting
That's so
oh my
cringe.
gosh. It was getting so and then he asked like, "Do you think your kids will like me?" And she said, "No." And he said, "Well, why don't you think that?" And then she started like kind of going to this spiel, and I couldn't really understand her. And then he was like, "Oh, I'm sure they'll like me. Don't worry about it. I have money." And then I was like,
Oh my
"Okay." And then
god.
it was like, and it was seriously these type of questions where, and then he said like something about, you need to like watch out, your hair's gonna get in your soup or something like that, or in your food. And then she was like, "No, it's okay." And he was like, "See your hair is like an inch away from your food. Like you got to get it away
So
from
she doesn't
there."
even like this guy. Like clearly she's
I don't even know.
So
I'm trying to go
what?
back. Oh, I'm trying to go back and find
Oh
some quotes.
no.
But it was just so weird because like the whole entire conversation was more so them just kind of going back and forth about, let's see, uh, uh, that must be good. Okay. Then he's asking why did she marry her ex, and have your kids met him? And I'm just reading some of the quotes that we
Oh
wrote
my
down.
god. So yeah, no, you might have stumbled into a 90-day fiance type scenario here. Like I think like that's what that sounds like is clearly the guy, he's got money, he's trying to, trying to appeal to her. She's not really that into it, but at the same time it's like, I'll be a 90-day fiance. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my
And,
god.
there's another quote on here where the guy literally said, or she said that her ex is her best friend.
Oh no.
And
Well, there's a red flag.
and then I'm reading the quote right now, and it says he's like, "Well, there's a difference between best friend and friend." And she's like, "Well, he'll do anything for me." And then he was like, "Well, then why did you marry him and then divorce him?" And they start going back and forth, and it's like, it was just a very, because we were just like on our the edge of our seats, just trying to listen to what this guy would basically throw down next to this lady. And I was just, I mean, it was just an awkward experience because I wish I could watch it happen.
Sure.
But listening to it, you just kind of, because at first I didn't even think that the person I made eye contact with was a part of this whole entire duo. But
Right.
you thought about like, man, do you think she's good looking? Because I've watched some 90 Day Fiance in the past, and you like you said, you have Big Ed on there, and you have like these guys that know how to rebuild a computer that are with some like dime. It's like
from
some
like
weird
Colombia or
yeah,
something.
it's weird stuff.
It's
Man.
usually not. It's not really usually a pairing that you would anticipate working. There's a reason
No.
why it makes for entertaining television, but there are a few things better than being in that type of scenario where like you're there, you're overhearing the awkward conversation. It's not like bothering you or infiltrating your scenario at all. You just get to sit there and witness it in a way and just like lose your mind about it. It is unbelievable. I mean, I've been there before with, I remember once I was at the airport eating like a pizza by myself or whatever, and I could overhear this guy on a phone call, like literally having a deep, serious relationship call with like his girlfriend or something, like talking about like breaking up and like all this sort of stuff. And I was sitting there just chowing down on my personal pan pizza from Pizza Hut, just
Right.
being like, "Oh my god, I can't believe this guy's having this conversation right now in public, like next to like a complete stranger." People are so weird, man, because like people are wired differently. Like I feel like you and I are wired in the same way. We're like, hey, if we're ever in some sort of tiff or argument with our significant others, like we're gonna try not to make it be in public. Like you bring that stuff
Right,
back
right,
home,
right.
and but these people having that full blown like not necessarily argument, but clearly like this guy is just trying to appeal to her, and she's just not into it, not having it. First of all, saying your ex is your best friend, like that's just the giant.
Whoa.
I'll tell you, that ex doesn't think he's just your best friend. I think he thinks there's some more in store. Oh my god!
But it
So
was,
did,
it was the funny part was is that he said he looked at the waitress and said, "Is there a way that we can share a glass of wine so it's not as much?" And she looked at him and said, "I mean, I can get you a glass of wine and you can pour it yourself, I guess." And he was like, "Yeah, that sounds great. What do you think?" And she kind of like didn't say anything, and it was like a 7-second pause. And he
Oh
was like,
no.
"Yeah, well, let's go with that. We'll go with that." Like it was
What
so,
what does
such
that
a
even mean? So he's gonna get a glass of wine, and then they're gonna hand her an empty glass, and it's like he can pour some of his wine into her
yes,
glass.
yes.
I mean, for a guy who's loaded, it's like, why aren't you just getting 2 glasses of wine?
Well, the best part was, well, no, they had wine before, but because what he was saying
No.
was kind of
Okay.
like turning her off a little bit, I guess. She was like, "I don't want any more," and then he was like, "Oh, we'll get one more." So, because I guess he tried to have one last ditch effort of a half a glass of wine to woo her over, and then the waitress
Yeah, that always works.
who was helping them came over to us and started helping us, and I looked over at her and I was like, "Interesting conversation over there." And she just like kind of like looked at me, like kind of rolled her eyes, like, "Oh my god," because every time she passed them, she like looked at them, like, "What's going on over here? Like, what's the new sitch?"
Right.
And it was just awkward, like you said.
So did you
Like,
ever get a full look at this guy? Like, like
yes,
was
yeah,
he kind of
he
a
had one of those.
nightmare?
He had one. Yeah, well, he had a button down on with a what do you want to call one of those fuzzy vests, like the Patagonia or something like that.
Okay, okay.
And then she was like in some, I don't know, whatever dinner attire, I
Sure,
guess you could
sure,
say.
sure.
But he you could see his voice though, because his voice, like at first when they first sat down, they were talking about like his lawsuit and his lawyers and all
Oh
these
my
different
God.
things. And I'm sure she had no idea what the heck he was talking
Yeah,
about.
no interest whatsoever.
Yeah, because he's trying to talk about some sophisticated stuff about some I don't know, some lawsuit. She probably has no idea what lawsuit he's talking about. And then he starts talking about all these litigation things. And then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, so do you think your kids are gonna like me?" And it's like, "What?" Like,
I
it's just,
love how he asked that and she said no. Like that
yeah,
is
right.
a wild response because it's like I mean a normal person just lies and says like yeah they'll probably like you. Like who says no?
Right.
Like this, I mean, this is clearly a woman that did not want to be on that dinner date whatsoever.
It was very, very awkward. And luckily it was towards the
I
end
love
of our
that stuff,
evening.
though.
So I sat there and I was finishing up my plate, and then they were about to sit down. So we sat there and we ordered another drink so we could listen.
Smart,
And,
smart move.
It would have been a little bit easier if I jotted down easier notes, but I'm just trying to recall it from a few days ago.
No,
it
but
was
but that
hilarious.
is that I'm telling you that is my favorite. One of my favorite things
Yeah,
is
yep.
being in that exact scenario that you're describing, where again, if not anybody doing anything crazy or like interfering with your meal or situation, but it's just enough to provide you and the person you're with a little entertainment, a little extra level of entertainment to be like, oh my God, is this happening right now? That is the most, I love it. I love it. I
There's
love
a
it.
difference between best friend and friend.
There is.
That's the moral of the story.
If you take away one thing, that's the thing I want you all to take away today. Let's hit up the rewind machine. A chance to talk about the previous week in DC sports. We'll start with the Washington Nationals. As the sad news, of course, Ted Lerner passed away. There's the post from the Washington Nationals. There was Ryan Zimmerman had something on Instagram. You had Dan Kolko tweet. Ted Lerner loved DC. He loved sports. He loved winning. He hated losing. He helped bring baseball back to DC. Helped use Nats Park to revitalize the Navy Yard community and helped bring a World Series to his city. Condolences to Lerner family from our boy Dan Kolko. And yeah, I mean, obviously sad news. I mean, this was one of the guys that literally, again, brought the Nats to DC, so we have the Lerner family to thank for that. The Lerner family likely will not own the Nats for much longer. I mean, the thinking is that somebody like Ted or somebody else is going to buy this team, so we'll see what happens there. And then the other note, baseball news, of course, spring training games start on the 26th, so it's coming up. And then one other baseball note, I did see MLB announced today, they announced these new rules for position player pitching. And we'll get to those a little bit later. Let's hit up Washington Capitals, Mike. Only a couple games for the Cap Pack this week. Boston and San Jose.
Moving on to the Washington Capitals, obviously since the All-Star break, they have had 2 games, as has been said. They beat Boston 2-1 on Saturday, so that's a really good win against one of the top 3 teams in the entire NHL. 2-1 on Saturday. Hathaway and Backstrom with goals. Darcy Kemper came out firing with 27 saves and a 96 save percentage. But then, the very next day, they lost to San Jose, the Sharks, 4-1. So not the best because you would expect, hey, we won against Boston. Let's go out there and take care of business against the Sharks. But it's okay. 1-1, we'll take it. Kuz scores the only lone goal for the Caps. Caps are now with 62 points, first wild card spot, 1 point up on the Pens from Pittsburgh. Moving on to the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch those Caps and Pens kind of battle for the positioning in that wild card. I mean, every week when we're on the show reporting kind of where the Caps are, it's always like they're 1 point up on Pittsburgh, or they're 2, or they're 3, and then it goes back down to 1. And so we'll see if the Pens end up overtaking them, or vice versa. I mean, or if the Caps are able to sneak up, into a non-wild card spot. We'll see. The Wizards, 26-29, ninth in the Eastern Conference. They did move up a spot since last week. Had a 2-1 week. They lost to Cleveland on Monday, 114-91. They got smoked. All 5 Cleveland starters were in double figures by halftime, so that was a rough one. And then on Wednesday, a nice win for the Wiz Kids at home, beating the Hornets 118-104. KP, 37 points, hit 8 threes in this one. Denny with 20, Beal with 17 and 10. And then Saturday, the Wizards had probably one of their best games of the season. 80 points in the first half is nuts. They beat the Pacers 127-113. They shot 70% from the field through the first 3 quarters. That does not happen often in basketball. And the Wizards were able to capitalize on a hot shooting night. That's one of those nights where the basket just kind of, where that rim just seems way bigger than it actually is, because everything you're throwing up is going in. The Wiz Kids, a lot of guys on their game there. Beal 21 points, KP with 17. As we move into a little football talk here, with the Super Bowl, of course, being the other day. I will say, not for the food side of things, from my end, not a whole lot of excitement. I mean, my big thing was the lunch that I talked about, the tacos and the chips and all that stuff. And since I went big for the lunch, I was like, I don't want to go too crazy for dinner, because it's like I'm already fat enough. I'm trying to lose weight. I can't go nuts here. So I kept it relatively light. I did the move that I've been doing like every weekend now, and that's just getting a little Wawa in. Order some Wawa subs, some hoagies, and then you buy some chips and a little candy and some drinks, and I mean, it wasn't too bad. Did a little chicken hoagie, whatever. So it was not the exciting, like, oh, here's my wings and my pizza and all that sort of stuff, because it was just me and Abby. So nothing too crazy for my Super Bowl spread. But hey, there's always next year. Maybe next year I'll throw a big party. We'll see.
So the one gripe that I have about the Super Bowl and food itself is that some people are just oblivious. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I mean, literally, when I say oblivious, people. So I went over. Here's a little quick story. So I went over to my buddy's house. We did the same thing last year, and I mentioned that to you last week.
Sure.
Went over there, and someone said, and I'm not going to say any names. They don't listen to the podcast anyway, so who cares? But they said, "Oh, I'm gonna bring Peruvian chicken," and I was like, "What?"
Okay.
And they said Peruvian chicken, yeah, and I'm gonna get some yuca, whatever the hell that is.
Yeah. I will say I like Peruvian chicken and yuca, but I would not bring it to a Super Bowl party.
I think I might have had yuca one time before. It sounds familiar, but
it kind of tastes like French fries, honestly.
Okay,
like when it's done right.
Well, then they ended up saying that I'm gonna get, I don't know, plantains, and then I'm gonna get beans. And I'm like,
oh no!
Okay,
see, this is not sounding.
This is not Super Bowl, so
No.
that's all I'm saying. And I started getting irritated. And my buddy who was kind of, excuse me, was kind of in on it. He said, "Well, why do you have an issue with it? You're not bringing it." I said, "Because when you go to a Super Bowl party, it has to be a spread of food and finger foods. I can't be sitting there cutting up a chicken breast." Or something like that.
Right.
Waiting for the quarter to end or something like that. I want buff dip. I want meatballs. I want something like that you can literally stick a fork in, boom, eat, done, eat, done.
Yeah, no, I'm fully with you on this. I will say, like, some of the food that you're talking about, it just does not seem, especially the chicken side of things. The chicken, it's like, this isn't Thanksgiving meal here where I'm getting turkey and I'm cutting it up and I'm eating and sitting down at a table and we're eating a meal. It's the TV's on, we're watching the game. It needs to be an easy to put on the plate meal that you can easily eat wherever in the room. Doesn't take much effort. You can just pop things in your mouth. Like
Yep.
that is, I'm 100% behind you on this.
So we ended up having one person, one of my best friends I grew up with, literally brought I think 8 cookies and 10 brownies. And I said,
Okay.
"What the hell is this? There are 10 adults here. I mean, 10 adults. You have like 7 kids running around, which
This is a disaster.
I'm not a huge. I'm not. I don't. I'm not gonna say I hate kids or anything like that. But
Sure,
when you are a
but-
teacher of elementary
Yeah.
school and you deal with kids every single day,
Oh, yeah.
sneezing
It gets
and,
old.
and asking you a million questions. Sorry, I don't want to be at a Super Bowl on a weekend having
No, I
kids
get
running around throwing dolls at you. So that's my biggest thing. Is luckily the kids stayed downstairs for the most part, which is awesome. Down the basement.
Yeah, you gotta have to. If this is a party, and this is advice for anybody that's throwing Super Bowl parties and things like that. Look, like you got to have the right house or place to do it.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you don't have especially if it's a situation where there are a lot of kids coming, there has to be another floor for them to be on. Because no, it's so true. Because like
Yes, it is, it
you,
is.
you cannot have a giant group of kids running around where all the adults are trying to watch the game because it will just be the most maddening thing in the world. Like
Right.
there has to be a play area, there has to be another floor, another room somewhere for the kids to go because obviously they don't care about the game whatsoever. They're kids.
Right.
They're trying to have fun. So like there has to be another place for them. And if you don't have a place that has the size for that, then don't throw the party at your
Right.
place.
So luckily this year they added another kid or two, but then they ended up going down the basement this year, which is thank God because last year we were trying to watch the whole entire Super Bowl halftime show and the kids were screaming and hollering and I was like, anyone else hear it? It's like it
Oh,
was so
that's
loud.
miserable.
It was miserable. But then so going back to the food, the guy that was going to bring this chicken, okay. He brought this. He said like, and he was blowing up the text message thread with no one responding back to him. By the way, so he said the Peruvian chicken place was closed. So I started laughing because I was like, all right, so you had this whole entire idea of doing this, and the place isn't even open.
And you didn't even look into it. Yeah.
There was like no planning of it, which I don't.
Oh,
with
no.
this particular person, I don't hold them to a high
Sure.
standard when it comes to stuff like that.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, they said, "Oh, I'm gonna bring mac and cheese and what was it? Mac and cheese and Popeyes." So they said, "I'm going to get the Popeyes." Which, by the way, the mac and cheese they never showed up. And last year he brought mac and cheese and it wasn't even cooked. He had to throw it in the oven. I'm like, okay, this is like, I mean, the planning of this person. So then all of a sudden he brings Popeyes, but he said in the text message thread that at 11 o'clock, he said, I'm picking it up now and I'm going to put it in the oven to keep it warm until game time. First of
Whoa,
all,
wait.
oh yeah, I know.
Wait, hold
exactly.
on. Let me ask some questions here.
Okay.
So this was at 11 a.m. on Super Bowl Sunday. Now let's
Yes.
let's point out the fact that the Super Bowl does not typically kick off until maybe about 6:45 ish. Coverage is going throughout the day, but the game itself not till around 6:45.
Yep.
So his plan was to get the chicken at like 11:30 in the morning, leave it in the oven for 7 hours, and then somehow have it taste good for eating it at 6:30. Now, let's remember a couple things. One, if you heat something for 7 hours, it is going to be dry. It is going to dry it out completely, and it is no longer going to have any sort of juiciness whatsoever. You are better off refrigerating the chicken and then just reheating it later on. It still may dry it out a bit, but it's going to be better than leaving something in the oven for 7 hours.
Yeah.
Just doesn't make any sense at all.
Put it this way. I don't really converse with this person anymore for the most part.
Sure. I would hope so. Not after this night that you're
Yeah,
talking
it's a
about.
final straw.
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep coughing now. But that's the funny thing is that when I saw that text message of I'm going to put it in the oven until game time, and the text message was sent at 11:30, and I found out later that he told someone he went to go get the Popeyes early because he thought it was going to be busy, which is a totally bogus excuse because you could have easily gone at 4:30.
4 o'clock. 4
Yeah.
o'clock. 4:30. You could have I can guarantee you would have been able to go get Popeyes at 4:30 because you know what? Everyone else was getting Popeyes 6 o'clock for the game at 6:30.
Right, right. And that's the funny thing is that he brought it there, and again, like I said, no mac and cheese to be served, and then all of a sudden, no one in the entire place touched that Popeyes because as I was pointed to earlier today. That when someone else told me that, oh yeah, it looked like it was just thrown back in the box. So they must have put it on a tray, thrown it in the oven, and then just thrown it back in the box. It was fries, nuggets, like basically a bucket of chicken. I'm like, all right, this is. I don't know how much money was spent on this whole entire extravaganza, but to be that lazy and thinking, oh, I'm going to go and get a Popeyes spread and throw it in the oven for 7 hours and not have any common sense that that's going to be drier than the Sahara Desert, I don't know what you're thinking. And that's why when everyone got there, my buffalo chicken dip, Jess's chocolate strawberries, the pigs in a blanket that we brought, all the stuff that we brought was picked through and pretty much done. But
Yeah, of course.
Those you could rebuild an entire chicken with what chicken was left. You
What a
could literally
disaster! This is one of the saddest things I've ever heard. I mean, to think like it went from Peruvian chicken to 7 hour oven blasted Popeyes
Yep.
to 10 cookies that somebody brought. I mean, this sounds like you guys basically saved the Super Bowl party because if you guys had not brought that food, what would have people been eating? I mean, it's like there's only so many cookies to go around here.
Right.
That
Right.
is
And that's the
so
problem
sad.
is that I specifically told my buddy that was hosting that his wife ended up making some meatballs and he also bought beer and stuff like that.
Sure.
And all that kind of stuff. But the difference is that I feel like whenever we go somewhere, first of all, Jess always does her thing in the kitchen where she makes this or that or all the different type of things. And I just think that it's kind of funny because when we take stuff over there, now it's not. The problem is it's not even about showing up empty-handed. It's about showing up with something that would easily be served in the garbage. Because
Right.
I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna. First of all, if you get like all these beans and all this other crap, I'm not gonna sit there and start eating it like a Thanksgiving meal. Like
Right,
I mean, I made a plate. I put 2 or 3 meatballs on there, a couple little small pigs in a blanket, and then I put a couple healthy scoops of buff dip on there, and then I put some celery on there, and then I went to town. And I was done in a matter of 3 minutes with all the stuff on my plate. Sorry, I
Right.
wasn't sitting there, trying to peel a chicken breast and
Yeah.
trying to get an extra glass of water because my mouth is so dry because I'm here eating a fry that was made by the morning crew.
Well, that's
at
the thing. It's like
Popeyes.
Popeye. The idea of Popeyes to a Super Bowl party. The idea is a solid idea. I mean, you bring a couple buckets of chicken in, stuff like that. Like that's not a bad idea. The execution is the issue, where it was like buying the food so early, not buying like the right combination of stuff. Like all they would have needed to do is go at 5 o'clock and look. Is it going to take a little bit longer? Probably, but it will be worth it when you show up to the Super Bowl party with 2 big old buckets of Popeyes chicken
Yep.
that everybody can. It's nice and warm, and everybody wants to dip into it. That makes you a hero at the Super Bowl party. So that is. Yeah, that is sad to hear. I mean, it sounds like my sad Wawa hoagie chicken sandwich was probably better than half the stuff that was at that party. I mean, that is a disaster.
Like I said, there were certain things there that were good. Like I said, the
Sure.
beef dip and everything. I mean, there was 0 chocolate covered strawberries left, and she made at least 20 and stuff
Right.
like that. So everyone was going to town on the food that looked good and that was pretty much edible that you wouldn't serve to a llama.
Yeah.
It's like,
You did your
I mean,
part. You guys
was-
did your
ugh.
part. That was the big thing, man.
Yeah.
See, that's why I'm very curious to hear about everyone's kind of Super Bowl spreads. I from a couple of my friends, I'd heard. I mean, one guy had a bunch of like Philly cheesesteaks
Okay.
in honor of the Eagles and stuff like that. And I didn't really hear too much about other parties for the most part. I mean, but I want to. So feel free to let us know either Twitter or TikTok or whatever at the DC Crossover Podcast. I want to get into our ratings for the night as a whole. I got 4 categories here. I've got the game, I've got the commercials, the halftime show, and I've got the broadcast. We're going to give our grades here. So A, B, C, A plus, blah, blah, blah. So the game itself, I will say, probably somewhere in the B range for me. Solid game. It was close throughout. There were a couple big moments here and there. Obviously, anytime you get a game that's kind of going down to the wire and it ends, on one team kicking a field goal for the go ahead in the last minute of play, like that makes for a good game. A lot of scoring, obviously. I know that didn't help you out with your bets, but at the same time, you got to like that from a fan perspective, seeing a lot of scoring there. So I'm going to go just a flat B for the game because the only reason why this wouldn't be in A territory for me would be the fact, obviously, big crucial call at the end of the game. Don't love that. There was still, it was not a perfectly played game from either side. Like we talked about over text, like the Eagles obviously botched a lot of things in the second half. Just the offense wasn't happening anymore. There was no pass rush from their side of things. The Chiefs weren't perfect either. So that's why from a game perspective, I can't say like these two teams were perfect or anything. So that's why I'm going to go right down solid B for me.
I would have to say the exact same grade, mainly for the sole fact, as you mentioned, the last thing that you said, which was these two teams were playing pretty much how they played all season in the first half, and in the second
Yeah.
half, it just, I mean, S the bet. I mean, literally, when you're looking at it, it doesn't make any sense because the second half, the Eagles' defense could basically be considered scarecrows in the entire second half because they couldn't stop the Chiefs to save their life. And I think, honestly, Pat Mahomes, I think he was embellishing that whole entire ankle thing because the dude was like, he had a whole entire high ankle sprain 2 weeks ago. And, yeah, sure, it healed a little bit. And then that hit, he looked like he was about to chop off his leg and all this kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, like, the second half, he, like, ran, like, 5 times. And one of them, he was running away from defenders. Like, it makes zero sense how you can
Sure.
sit there and act like that. But I don't know. I guess he's trying to make a good story for the Super Bowl. But overall, the second half was just a pain in the ass, honestly, for me because I needed the Eagles to win for my bets, and they literally couldn't stop a Pee Wee football team in that second half. And yes, obviously the Chiefs are good, but when it comes down to it, you have to be able to stop a team in the second half. Yes, they make adjustments, but if you're this super great defense, you can't let literally 24 points in the second half of the Super Bowl happen. I mean, that's just terrible. And they didn't record one sack, and they were one of the top sacks teams in the entire NFL history, and they couldn't record one sack in the NFL Super Bowl. That's terrible.
No, that was what was really disappointing and cause part of my reason for picking them was like, hey, Eagles defense, they're going to be able to show up. They're going to put some pressure on Mahomes. Mahomes had a bad ankle and was able to just parade around the field all game long. Like with, I mean, he was when Pat Mahomes who has a bum ankle and he's able to run 30 yards on you. You're just not having a good day defensively, that's for sure. So the game itself, we're both around the B range. For the commercials side of things, this is an article that CNN put out as far as some of like the better commercials. I know for you it's probably tough because you're at a Super Bowl party. It's tough to and there's so many things going on and conversations happening. You probably didn't get to tune in to a ton of these commercials. You had, and I agree with some of these being some of the better ones. You had one of the most kind of surprising ads of the night was this the Ram ad where it was about premature electrification, where it was like all sexual like double entendres and like it's a pretty good ad for anyone who missed that one. It kind of came late in the game. I think it was in the fourth quarter. Probably because like that way kids wouldn't really be watching because there's a lot of like kind of sexual references in that commercial, but it was funny. T-Mobile, the one with Bradley Cooper and his mom, that was pretty funny. You had Steve Martin and Ben Stiller show up for the Pepsi Zero Sugar ad, which was funny because Abby was literally drinking a Pepsi Zero Sugar while we were watching that. You had the Breaking Bad reunion for the Popcorners ad. You had those dog ads where it's like, here's a whole dog's life. The one thing about the dog ad, there was one dog ad in particular where it was like the girl had this dog when she was like little, and then now she's a mom and has a kid, and the dog's still alive. It's like, no chance. The dog's dead. The dog's been dead. That's a second dog. You had the Kia commercial, I guess, where like, yeah, they left the kid's binky at home, and he's got to go home and go get it. Whatever, that wasn't that great. And then the ones that were the losers of the night. Interesting. They said that Miles Teller commercial is a loser. I mean, it was weird. It was like Miles Teller just dancing around. I don't know if you saw that one, but like I didn't think it was like that bad. Doritos, DraftKings, shout out. So yeah, but for me, I guess, and I want to hear your thoughts. Um, it seems like the trend now, at least the past few years, has just been a celebrity has to be in every single commercial that's
Right,
out there for the
right.
Super Bowl. Because it used to be more of a hidden trick. It was like, or hidden treat rather, where it was like, maybe like 2 or 3 commercials during the Super Bowl, it would be suddenly like, oh my God, there's a celebrity in the commercial, and it was kind of cool. It was like a new thing. Now, during the Super Bowl, you'd be hard pressed to find any commercial that doesn't have a celebrity. They're all in there. They're all getting
Right.
paid a bunch of money to be on these commercials. That doesn't make it as special anymore. It's not as fun and interesting to see all these celebrities in every single Super Bowl commercial. So that's kind of boring. There were also no commercials that made me really be like, oh man, I'm going to remember that one. Like when we have this conversation next year, I'm not going to be able to remember any of these commercials from
Not at
this
all.
year because really didn't stand out. I'd probably give them like a C minus, honestly. Like there was a lot of them that were just fine. Like they were like, yeah, this is kind of funny, but it was definitely nothing blew me away this year at all.
Right, and when you're looking back at older commercials that really you remember, Doritos is always
Yeah,
I
they
would say
usually bring it.
Doritos is usually a staple of when it comes to really, really good shtick and stuff like that. I was teaching the other day, and I told one of my classes, I said, "Who's ready for the commercials? Anyone excited for those?" Because obviously some kids don't really care about the game and so on and so forth, as you mentioned before. And they were like,
Right.
yeah, I really want to see them and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, I remembered this one commercial that I said, which was the Doritos, the guy at the gym, and it was like Crazy Jerry or something like that. And they're like, why is your mouth, orange? And the guy's like, oh, I found Doritos in Jerry's locker. He's never going to know. And they're like, wait, Crazy Jerry? And all of a sudden, or something like that. I don't know if you remember that one. And literally,
Yeah, that's starting to sound familiar.
yeah, and then the guy is like, what are you talking about? And then all of a sudden he looks over and there's this guy in a Doritos costume that has Doritos, like he looks like a samurai, and he's sitting there like this. Woo!
Yeah. See, like that's the thing is like no commercials this year like made me laugh out loud. Like there was nothing this year that was like, that was hilarious. Like
Yeah.
I'm laughing like crazy for that. I mean, like in the past you'd have some of the iconic like obviously Budweiser and the Clydesdales. There would usually be something like that during the Super Bowl.
Dalmatians, yeah.
I mean, the E-Trade baby ads were like they used to be pretty funny back in the day. Now it's
Right,
like they
yeah.
bring them out every Super Bowl now. They're not as interesting. You go real old school and you get like the Joe Green commercial, like "Hey, here you go, kid" or whatever when he tosses him the thing. There's definitely there- you know there's been commercials in the past that last year even you had. I will say like one of my favorite commercials last year was the late Larry David ones with FTX, where it was like all the ideas that like all the inventions, and he was like, I'm not into that, and like
Yeah, yeah,
which is
right.
funny now that FTX like is a total scam, but like but anyways, I feel like there was at least a few memorable commercials last year. This year, it's like, man, I honestly don't know what I'm gonna remember at all, if
It was
anything.
just it was
So
just terrible because even when I was watching them, like at one point, because the best commercials are usually in the first half of the game because they're
yeah,
more
yeah, definitely.
expensive, they have more viewers, all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. And when I really saw nothing in the first, say, quarter and a half, I was like, this is going to be a dud. And that's the
Yeah,
problem is
toast.
that there's just no, and I guess I don't know if you can consider it being, in today's age where everyone's getting canceled, this and that and
Yeah, maybe
that
they're
and all this kind of
nervous
stuff.
about trying too hard.
And
I don't know.
like they're just like, oh, let's throw Shaq in this commercial and and just go with it because I think the only commercial Shaq would really be funny in is those Buick commercials where
Right.
everyone's like, you don't fit in that Buick, because the
Yeah.
guy's 7'3" and the Buick is 7'3" long, stuff like that. So you just think about it and say, I think people are just letting their creative genes, stay in the closet because of the sole fact that they don't want to bring it out and then all of a sudden someone say like, "Oh, we're canceling,"
No, I think you have a point
CBS or something
there.
like that. Yeah,
I think you have a point there because I think they're not taking as many chances as maybe they used to. Even it's like,
right.
hey, even if this doesn't work, like we're gonna take a shot. Now it's all very like safe, where it's like, all right, let's have Bradley Cooper and his mom talk about T-Mobile in an ad. It's like, all right, it was kind of cute and funny, but at the same time, it's like this isn't like groundbreaking here. This isn't that
Yep.
interesting because used to be Super Bowl commercials were like, this is the greatest commercials you'll see all year. We're gonna be during the Super Bowl because it was like the best of the best of the best of the best. And now we just don't really get that anymore. So, halftime show. As far as our thoughts there, I know we talked a little bit over text about it. As Rihanna, obviously the performance last night. Um, I definitely. My opinion on it, especially my immediate reaction, wasn't necessarily like this was the greatest halftime show ever. Like the people that are saying that are just nuts to me.
Right.
But I will say the things that stood out to me were she did well. She does have a lot bigger list of hits, and she definitely didn't play them all that night. She did still play a decent amount of. And as I got the set list up here, I mean a lot of this list is absolute smash hits for sure. So she did hit a lot of these songs. The choreography was pretty cool. And look, I'm not a guy that sits around and talks about choreography, but like I will say, like I thought the dancers and all that sort of stuff, it looked pretty good on TV. It didn't look too like sometimes in the past it looks really weird. Like remember the weekend had like all those people that looked exactly like him running around, and it was kind of like this is so weird. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say last night, while obviously they're in these white like jumpsuits with these masks, and I was like, man, if I had to wear that, I would have passed out because it's like like they're jumping around doing all this cardio and they're wearing these like sweatsuits. But so I thought that they did pretty cool. They did a pretty good job. The platforms up in the air kind of looked pretty cool. So I thought the show part was pretty solid. Rihanna herself didn't do anything super crazy. Like I would say, like yeah, she was dancing around and stuff, but like there wasn't anything like super revolutionary or interesting. She just kind of moved around and sang the songs. Like she didn't do anything super different or interesting. But I mean, obviously she's probably lip syncing anyways. And then that's why like looking back at it, I would probably give it somewhere in the like B minus range now, where maybe last night immediately after maybe I was more of a B plus. Now I'm probably a little bit more of a B minus because yeah, I just don't think it was that iconic that some people are describing it to be. I think people rush to say like this was the greatest thing ever before actually sitting down and realizing this wasn't the greatest thing ever.
My biggest gripe when it comes to any Super Bowl halftime show is number one, or I should say gripes. Number one, they have to be relevant. You can't get
Sure.
some band from the 70s or 60s who are 90 years old up there trying to electrify a crowd, because if you look at the demographic, you're going to get more views if you have more relevant people. I mean, i.e. last year when you had Dr. Dre, Eminem, so on and so forth, Snoop Dogg,
Right,
all those
right,
people.
right.
So I love Rihanna. I think Rihanna has a ton of great hits, and I think honestly a lot of the hits that she is featured on are better than her actual hits. That's
Sure.
just a personal opinion, but I just don't get it. I mean, I think I'm on an island here, but I have read up on some people really having the same viewpoint as me, that I just think it wasn't that great. I think the mashup, some of them are good, but it's like when you start with the song that she started with, that's not even, I wouldn't even say that's one of her top 5 hits of herself.
I agree. I agree.
I mean, everyone's saying like, oh yeah, what is she going to start with? What's her going to be her hit song? Because everyone said it has to be a song that your 57-year-old mom or something like that, or grandmother's like, oh yeah, I think I've heard this song before. Yeah, I remember this song.
Yeah, I don't know if you want your grandma singing this one. The one that she started with. Also, remember, like, there was no build up to the start of the performance. It was literally like she's right there on camera and like it's starting.
Yeah,
Like I expected things to be like totally dark and maybe she like rises up out of the stage or like something crazy, and it was like nope, she's just right there. Yeah, she was on a platform at the time, so she was technically up in the air, but there was no like cool build up at all. It was just literally like boom, Rihanna's there, fully lit up, she starts singing her song, and
Yeah.
like so yeah, it didn't feel that special to me, you
And
know.
my number two would have to be you have to be extravagant to the point that, oh, Katy Perry's riding a lion, not a real one, but obviously a lion or something like
Yeah,
that, coming out in the field. Beyonce's marching down the field doing her thing, and Justin Timberlake at one point was in the stands. Like, you think
right.
about certain things like that that
I mean,
make
Lady
it.
Gaga like jumped down from like the roof or whatever. Remember
Yeah,
for
right,
her,
right.
like that was crazy.
It's nuts because the Super Bowl halftime show has millions and millions of people watching it. So when you think about it, you don't think about, like you said, oh, she's just standing there and she looks around like, I'm Rihanna. It's like,
Right.
okay, like, sweet, that's awesome. And then she starts out with a song that I think is, it's not, don't get me wrong, it's a good song, but
It's not top five. It's not top
I don't
five
think
in
it's
her
top because
catalog.
if you, like
No, I'm with you.
if you look at all her songs, you could have had and I'm just a normal Joe Schmo over here, but I think you could have had the stadium go black, and then all of a sudden you have like everyone's cameras are out and stuff like that. But then you could have had all of the lights go on with that song, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
would have been a huge build up because that song builds up.
A
And you
couple of
think
those
about
songs could have worked. All of the lights could
it's
have worked.
it's just
Diamonds
like,
could have worked.
and I love.
Um,
And I thought I had it in the bag. I tried to call it too, saying
oh,
that.
I know. I know you must have thought that because they played a little bit of what's my name
Yeah.
like leading into the start of the concert, and I was like, oh, Mike was right. But
Oh man, I can't.
I've had the same thought.
I can't believe it. But I just think that for me, yes, okay, it was good and stuff like that. But like you said, I'm not going to remember it. I don't have, Eminem coming out there playing "Lose Yourself," in Detroit or something like that. Because
Right,
the
right.
biggest thing is yes, she's relevant, but also, and I'm not going to say anything about the pregnancy and all that stuff because yes, she was pregnant and whatever. But it's like, yes, I understand that some people were kind of turned off that she was pregnant and that she couldn't do a lot of things that maybe she wanted to do because you see her in music videos and different stuff like that, dancing and whatnot. But then she's sitting there doing a makeup ad deal and stuff like
Yeah.
that she was promoting. I'm like, all right, this is getting kind of weird. And it's just, for me, like, some people are like, oh, I kind of liked it. I liked it. And then, like you said, there's those way off to the right people. that are
Yeah, you
sitting there
can't.
saying,
You
oh, that's
cannot
the best
say
thing ever. But
you
it's
can't.
like,
Yeah, that's what you can't say. You can't say that was the best thing ever because I'm with you. There was no big risks from a like production standpoint. Similar to what we're saying about the commercials is like with the halftime show too. It kind of felt the same thing where it was like there were no because look like people clown on Katy Perry, but like she did do some crazy wild stuff in that performance.
yeah,
Like you said,
Left
riding
Shark
in on the
was there.
tiger. I mean, yeah. Rihanna should have had a couple of those sharks dancing next to her. That would have
Hey,
worked.
I think the best part about the show was randomly they had an overhead shot and the camera was zooming out, and then all of a sudden you just saw the random two dancers per platform sitting there just laying on the ground, thrusting up in the air, and
Yeah.
I lost it. It was the
Yeah, the
funniest sort of-
choreography. That's what I'm saying. Like the choreography was pretty crazy. And then here's just a note from Pompliano talking about how and I've been reading these threads all week about how again, obviously, Super Bowl performers don't get paid, but their albums will go like way up on the charts, or they'll gain all these followers. And like for Rihanna, the same difference. I mean, 1.5 million Instagram followers in 24 hours. Her searches for her beauty company went up a ton, and she's got her Apple Plus documentary deal coming up as well. So it's like she's just fine. She didn't need the money from any sort of performance for that.
Right.
So we're on the same page there, and then we'll go broadcast team wise. Yeah, my note to you during the game was, and again, it's probably tough for you at a party to hear the broadcast, but Greg Olson. Look, I like Greg Olson a lot.
Yeah.
I think he does a good job. I think he is starting to surpass the hype that was around Romo for a while because Romo's just been getting crushed this season because he just has not been that good. And so I think Olsen. Here's what they needed. They need a better play-by-play guy in the mix. Look, I like Kevin Burkhardt. He's like a third-tier play-by-play guy in the league for NFL. Like he is not your big game broadcaster. He's good. He's very boring. He's very plain. He's not going to give you anything that interesting. So if they had stuck a different play-by-play guy in there with Greg Olsen, and obviously I know they can't really do this because everyone's working for different networks, but in theory, you stick a better play-by-play guy in there, you put Greg Olsen, and then you put a third person in the booth. I would have loved a third voice up there, just another personality in the mix, I think would have been interesting and made for a better broadcast because, not having Buck in there, not having Al Michaels,
I would
Jim
have loved
Nance,
Kirk
like,
Herbstreit. I think Kirk Herbstreit did a
oh,
great
see,
job
that's
this
if
year.
they did Greg Olson, Kirk Herbstreit, and then like Joe Buck, and again, I know they can't do this, but it's like if they
Right.
did something like that, or Al Michaels, or one of those guys, it's like it just would have made such a difference because Burkhart is good, but he's robotic, he's boring.
I want Gus Johnson.
Olson,
That's all I want. I want Gus Johnson.
well,
Like,
yeah, if they put
he's
Gus in
going
there,
all
it would
the
be a wrap.
way!
Yeah, there's going to be a Gus Johnson documentary coming out, which I'm excited for because,
Ooh.
Gus is my guy. I mean, Gus is why I got into broadcasting in general when I started. So it was literally because of Gus Johnson.
yeah.
So, but my grade, so broadcast wise, I mean, I definitely give like a C minus sort of situation there because it was just, I did like Olson, but Burkhart just gives you really no personality at all.
Yeah, I mean, I go with C plus. I mean, they're a good broadcasting team, but they're a good broadcasting team for week 16,
Right,
important game. Like they're not Super Bowl quality. Like
they're division championship game like team, like that's fine. Or like, hey, maybe you want to give them a conference championship game, sure. But Super Bowl, it did not have the Super Bowl feeling at all.
I have a feeling that what they should do is just say screw it. They should have a 3-network deal and have NBC, Fox, and CBS all broadcast the Super Bowl, and they all just split the dividends. I mean, now obviously that may not work because everyone's competitive. But if you think about
they'll
it
never
that
do
way,
it, but that would be awesome.
you
say.
think about it that way, they can sit there and they can say, hey, we're going to put, this year we're going to have our number one team. This year NBC's number one team. This year CBS is number one team, and they're going to have those reviews out there and whatnot of which teams did it better, what broadcast duos did it better, and so on and so forth. But it just, I mean, it wasn't like extravagant. I think that it was more of a, like I said, a week 16, divisional game kind of broadcast team. It wasn't really a Super Bowl type quality, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like I'm pretty sure next year is Jim Nance and Tony Romo. Because it's going to switch back to CBS, so we'll see. I mean, that could work, but again, Romo's got to figure his stuff out because he has not been very good. The other thing is, it would be kind of cool if they did like a Manning cast for the Super Bowl. I will say, like that would be kind of awesome to have an alternative option there. But that's the problem with all this network crap is like we can't do anything fun. We'll skip over baseball talk. We'll skip over the final lap, and we'll just hit up the trivia question of the week. I will actually be giving Mike a trivia question here. I'm pretty sure you haven't asked me this. I was wondering this earlier when I looked at this. It is a Washington Nationals question.
Okay.
Your question is, which player hit 2 grand slams in one game against the Milwaukee Brewers in 2009? Which player hit 2 grand slams in one game against the Brewers in 2009?
I have a name.
Okay.
Just trying to see. You always have that first answer in your head.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking of who could combat that. Okay, my one question I would have to say would be, did they play outfield?
They did play outfield.
God, I want to get this right. Wasn't Bryce. I know that because Bryce wasn't there at the time.
Right. Yeah. 2009.
All right, my answer.
Okay.
It was the Hammer, Josh Willingham.
Let's see if you're correct or not. Let's stop the music. Your final answer is Josh Willingham. Oh, and my board has... Oh, here we go. That is correct. That's not that exciting. That is correct. Josh Willingham hit 2 grand slams in a game against the Brewers. First grand slam was hit against Jeff Suppan, and the second against Mark DeFelice. He became the 13th player at the time in MLB history to accomplish that feat. I don't know how many players have been added to that list at this point because, like, that's a tough thing to do. 2 grand slams in a game. You do that, give him the weekend off at that point. It's like, hey, man, we've had players hit multiple home runs in games and all that sort of stuff. Like Rendon had like a 10 RBI game or something crazy. I mean, like it's nuts when guys go off like that. Josh Willingham,
Yeah,
he went ham that day.
he was my number one answer. The only problem is I was thinking, I was like, man, could Adam Dunn be the guy that did it or something like that? I was just trying to think of who, like you said, who could be.
Dunn was always a possibility there for sure. He was on the short list, but no, that Willingham, because Willingham was like unassumingly, Willingham was a very underrated player for the Nats. Like he was solid.
Yeah.
He wasn't the best glove in the outfield, but he had a great bat, and like he was a quiet kind of leader in the clubhouse, and like he got the job done. So it liked him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't. Yeah, like you said, he wasn't something special, but
Right.
overall, he gave us a few good years because obviously we were rebuilding the entire team because we moved to Washington. I mean, overall, I think that it's just one of those guys that everyone liked him, but he wasn't this guy that you're going to rush out to get his jersey.
No, not a lot of Willingham jerseys at the ballpark, I will say. As we hit up the money line, sponsored by friends at DraftKings, our picks of the week. With NFL being done now, we got to get a little creative here with our picks. So I'm going to go the soccer route. My lock is, and I believe both, one of these games is tomorrow, the other is Wednesday, but the Wednesday game is Arsenal over Man City. I'm taking Arsenal plus 190. For the win there. And then my dog, my Sunderland boys play QPR tomorrow afternoon. I'm taking Sunderland plus 200 at home against Queen's Park Rangers. The way the Sunderland season has gone, and I know nobody cares about this whatsoever, is basically they'll have a really bad game and then they'll play great the next game. They had a bad game this past game. They're going to be great tomorrow against QPR, and I like the plus 200 odds there as well. So I'm definitely putting some money on Sunderland.
So, I don't really know too much about Sunderland unless whatever you say through text message. So I'm not going to take them. All right, I'll trust you, but I'm not going to.
Go ahead. It's okay. You don't have to. But Arsenal over Man City. It's
That's a
fine.
good one. I like that
there as well. Yeah.
So obviously, like you said, it's becoming the scarce part of the year, I guess you could say. Even though we are trying to figure out the whole entire XFL situation. We would like to see the odds for the XFL. I haven't seen them come out yet, but I am going to the DC Defenders game on Sunday night against the Seattle Dragons. I don't know why I said it like that.
It worked.
Sure. My lock, Justin Thomas, minus 150 to get in the top 20 of the Genesis Invitational. Had JT winning this week. He came out pretty slow out of the gate, shot even the first day. And then,
I thought Scotty Scheffler was going to take it this weekend, and then he did not. It did not go so well for the chef, man.
It's just I thought JT was going to probably come out and do what JT does, but that's what he did pretty much in the second, third, and fourth round, where he would make a stretch of 3 birdies in a row, and then all of a sudden he would slow down and get a bogey or something like that,
right?
And just lose the streak. But he's the type of guy that can do that. And at minus 150. I mean, 1-to-1, pretty much odds here almost. You can pretty much easily, I think, notch in JT to get into the top 20. And then my dog, I'm going with Tiger. I'm going with Tiger.
You got to.
20,
That's your boy.
Plus 450 to make the top 20 at a event that he's played millions of times at Riviera. So I think, honestly, if Tiger top 20, I might need to throw 10, 20 bucks on this just to get a little action in the skinny because in forever. But when you're looking at it, the guy is Tiger Woods, okay? He says he feels great to come back. Who knows what shape he's going to be in, but you have to admit, yes, he hasn't played in like maybe a year since the
2021 British Open.
Yeah,
the first official event.
Yeah. I just think that when you're looking at it, yes, he a few months ago, whatever, he wasn't doing so hot with his lower legs, lower half, I guess you could say. But the biggest thing about it is that's some juicy numbers right there. Plus 450 to make the top 20. He doesn't have to win the thing. He doesn't even have to be in the running.
He's been playing there since he was 16.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's crazy. He's been playing there forever. A smaller bet, by the way, is just to make the cut is plus 158 for Tiger there. So it's like it's minus 205 to miss the cut and plus 158 to make the cut. So it's like if you don't want to go all in for the top 20, the plus 450, throw a little money on plus 158 for Tiger to at least make the cut.
Tiger does not go out there if he knows he doesn't have a chance to make the
Right.
cut.
That's a big
He's
thing.
he's
Yeah.
not going to go out there and do that thing. I did the
Yeah, I
exact
like
same
that.
thing that I go out there and I bet on make miss cuts when I actually know something. Now I could go out there and do them, but I still think he might get top 20. But it's just like 2 years ago when Bryson DeChambeau was like, "Oh, the Augusta is a par 67 for me" or whatever, and I went out there and I told everyone bet your mortgage on him missing the cut. He went out there and
Dingus.
sucked.
He's a dingus.
So there you go. Tiger Woods plus
Tiger
450,
Woods.
top 20, baby. Let's do it.
All right,
Tiger,
let's ride it.
Tigre.
Let's ride it. See if you can hit this weekend. Again, the money line picks. No more football, so until the XFL and USFL and all that other stuff starts up, we'll be putting some
Yep.
bets on that probably. That just about does it tonight. I mean, I know everything was Super Bowl heavy, but we're gonna get into some Nats talk as probably next week because as we talked about the spring training game kickoff on the 26th. So we'll be getting into kind of what the roster looks like heading into this upcoming season, as well as still keeping an eye on the Whiz Kids who are still in the playoff hunt and the Caps, of course, in the wild card hunt. So there's some playoff hockey and maybe basketball to be played here within the next few months. So excited for that. Be sure to stay tuned with the show at the DC Crossover Net Surround 16 and TikTok the DC Crossover podcasts on the talk.
Go Defenders.
Yes. Yeah, go Defenders. And even though football season is over, we're still going to honor our friend, our comrade, John Z, as he'll sing us out on this episode. Doesn't matter if Matt Nagy's not the coach anymore. We're gonna let John Z sing us out. This has been another episode of the DC Crossover. Turn it up, Big John.
Counting dollars, he'll be hurting stars. Yeah, he'll be hurting stars.